谢这次普利马艺术奖的邀请，也非常感谢台湾原住民还有这次主办单位跟策展人会对我们的热烈欢迎，我们感到非常的愉快。今天要跟各位介绍是来自于纽西兰的艺术家。那首先呢，后来要强调的是，他是出生在纽西兰、生长在纽西兰的东家人，所以他是移民的女儿。对他来讲，东家是一个密不可分的存在。
In Aotearoa, we acknowledge and respect the unique place of Māori as tangata whenua, people of the land. The landscape of Indigenous art practice is diverse, and it is vast, and it includes Indigenous mediums such as weaving and carving, but it also includes contemporary art practice, and this takes place in the gallery and in non-gallery spaces.
当然，这边要强调的是，所谓的原住民艺术其实非常的多元、非常的广泛，他们使用很多的传统素材，当然也使用很多当代的媒介等等，而且这些的创作的地点并不只是在艺廊、画廊，也同时出现在其他地方。
So for the purposes of this introduction, I will be focusing on several works from contemporary Pacific artists from Aotearoa that give some insight into the complexity of contemporary art practice in Aotearoa.
在今天为各位介绍几件来自于南太平洋地区还有纽西兰地区的原住民艺术家的作品，让各位能够一窥到底在纽西兰还有南太平洋的艺术有什么样的面貌。
There are many collective threads that many Indigenous artists share from Aotearoa and indeed across the Pacific. One that is probably the most prominent is an Indigenous temporality or sense of time.
在原住民的艺术当中，其中有一项非常重要的重点是原住民对于这个站态还有时间的观感和看法。
Across the Pacific, we move into the future with our backs facing our past, constantly informed by it.
当然，在面对未来的时候，也不断的回顾跟回想、回望过去的历史。
I believe this is not a nostalgic orientation to the world, but an eminently practical one. Constantly making choices informed by the past, its knowledge and its richness, and moving at pace and propelling us forward into the future.
对我而言，这并不是一种怀旧而已，而是我们希望能够从过去积累的经验跟知识，然后帮助我们作为判断以及迎向未来的挑战。
Such an orientation blurs the boundaries between what is traditional, what is contemporary, terms that have been problematic for many artists. But it also means that we have a fluid sense of time that connects the past, the present, and the future.
所以，因此，在我们现在语言当中，这种传统跟当代，其实对于很多的这种界定，其实对很多原住民艺术家而言都是非常的有问题的。他们可以在不同的时间里面穿梭流动，也因此他们对于时间观感和一般人不太一样。
And this can be seen in many artworks and is particularly important to the work of the collective, the Mata'aho Collective, and this is the image of one of their works behind me.
各位在画面上看到的是其中一个来自于纽西兰的毛利语，他们的这个团体，他们所创作出来的作品。
The Mata'aho Collective is a collaboration of 4 Māori women that make large-scale textiles under one single collective authorship.
各位看到这个团体总共有4位毛利人女性所组成，她们一向以来都是创作出非常大型的纺织作品，还有织品的艺术，而且他们都这个团体名称共同发表。
This work is called Kikomoana, and it is a large-scale textile that the collective made together through a process of what is called Wang. It's an Indigenous Māori term that means to come together, to forum or to conference.
各位看到这件作品叫做 Kikomoana， 他们在强调的是通过这件织品，4个人一起同心协力创作出来的作品。
For them, the process of Wang is a way in which knowledge is shared, but also different kinds of knowledge, including genealogy and history, is passed from one generation to the next.
在这个过程当中，其实不但是分享知识，而且这些知识会代代相传。
A unique part of the landscape of Aotearoa is that as well as having such a strong base of Indigenous artists, it has also created the platform for many Pacific artists in New Zealand.
当然，在过程里面，其实因为这样的平台，也让很多纽西兰或者是来自南太平洋的艺术家有得以发声跟创作的空间。
New Zealand works as a regional hub for the Pacific, drawing many art and artists through exhibitions, but also through collections.
各位看到，其实纽西兰成为这个南太平洋这个区域的艺术的枢纽之后呢，吸引了很多南太平洋艺术家到这边来，不论是展示或者是加入典藏。
Many of the artists were born in New Zealand like myself and adopt a similar way of working, drawing on indigenous language, knowledge and concepts in the development of new work.
很多的原住民，他们都到了纽西兰之后，都一样会引用很多过去原住民的语言、知识跟文化，作为他们创作的素材跟灵感。
One of the leading Pacific artists, and indeed New Zealand artist, is this performance artist, Tjaluvie, who is from Tonga and lives in New Zealand, and he creates performances that require quite a high level of endurance.
各位看到的这一位是来自于东家的行为艺术家，他在纽西兰也做各种不同的行为艺术，在纽西兰的各处展演。
His performances mediate and grapple with Tongan concepts of the body, of fibre, as well as a Western performance art.
他们在这边采用来自东家对于身体的概念，同时也会展现出东家的行为艺术跟表演艺术。
And this particular performance is called Mo'oi Pukuhausia, which in Tongan means a life left to the cold. And in this performance, he lived outside as a homeless person for 2 weeks in a suburban gallery in Auckland. For the artist, the performance revealed many of the social and cultural prejudices that are in our permanent civic spaces, including our galleries.
这边看到他在这件作品当中，作品人在这个画面上面的第二行，他们其中这个概念、这个意思、这个名称、这个作品的名称叫做“活在寒冷之中”。这位艺术家就以像是游民的身份一样，在奥克兰郊区的一间画廊外面，户外生活了2个礼拜。他希望通过这样的行为艺术展演，呈现出很多纽西兰不同的社会问题。
Both of these artists, both Mataʻaho and Reihana, work very closely with senior artists, and it is this model of mentoring from one generation to another that is also happening in Aotearoa.
这些原住民艺术家，同时还有另外一项特点是非常常跟很多资深艺术家合作，好像导师制一样，透过不同的传习的方式来传承这些艺术形式。
The work of Indigenous artists in Aotearoa, Māori as well as the work of Pacific artists in Aotearoa, are helping to shape many of the global dialogues about art in our region in Oceania, as well as dialogues about Indigenous art. I'm going to trip up over that.
各位看到，因为这些来自于南太平洋还有纽西兰的艺术家的创作跟展演之后呢，让很多人开始去了解了来自于这个地区，还有来自大洋洲的这些艺术创作，有不同的对话，跟进一步去认知原住民艺术。
And their contributions to the dialogue has really helped to create a kind of global Indigenous consciousness around the way we approach place, the way we approach history, and as well as the way that we are creating art. And much of this is due to the work of many of our senior artists, especially the work and practice of Lisa Reihana.
在很多时候，我们都会去透过他们的艺术创作，说重新关心他们如何去看待这些场所、这些文化，还有这些艺术跟历史。同时，在今天的讲者，在 Reihana 的作品里面，也同时去探究了当地的历史演变。
I have the honour of introducing Lisa Reihana to you all this afternoon. Lisa is of Ngāpuhi, Ngāti Hine and Ngaitu descent and is from the far north of New Zealand. She graduated from Elam School of Fine Arts in Auckland with a Bachelor of Fine Arts and completed her Master of Design through the Unity Institute of Technology.
今天很荣幸的为各位介绍今天讲者 Lisa Reihana， 她是来自纽西兰的原住民，她毕业于奥克兰大学的艺术学院，然后她的硕士是在 Unity 科技学院完成。
Her works embody the indigenous temporality that I mentioned earlier, where the boundaries of the past, the present, and the future are fluid. She works across video, film, photography, sound, performance, sculpture, and design, unpacking very complex ideas about Māori identity, interrogating the colonial gaze, and looks deeply at the fabrication of history and representation of Indigenous people.
今天的讲者他非常强调，他能够在他在不同的这些展演当中，其实都有很多去关照毛利人的历史，还有纽西兰的历史。他其实所创作的素材非常多元，包括了录像、摄影、设计、雕塑等等。
She has an extensive practice and is exhibited widely. She is represented in public and private collections around the world, and in 2017 represented New Zealand at the Venice Biennale with her stunning work In Pursuit of Venus Infected, which is shown here as part of the Pulima Festival.
他的作品多年来已经获得了许多的公立以及私人的典藏，而他今天跟各位看到现在演的这部作品叫做《追寻金星感染》呢，也在去年的时候代表纽西兰参加2017年的威尼斯双年展，这一次也在当代馆展出。
I'd like to welcome Lisa Reihana to speak about her work.
接下来我们邀请展览来介绍他的作品。
Kia ora koutou katoa. Warm Pacific greetings from Maori land, as well as here we are in the Austronesian sweep of the world.
所以我们今天要来自于纽西兰用毛利语，然后跟各位来自于南岛语族的各位一起欢迎各位参加。
I'd like to thank all the organisers for MICAWOR. What a beautiful show and concept behind the show, the turning of fertile ground.
首先，我要非常感谢主办单位这次举办了这么精彩的展览，用搬动这个概念来呈现这次的作品。
And it's my great honour, as well as my partner James, to be here and to be a part of the show and for this work to be seen within an Indigenous context of this part of the world.
在这一次，我也很高兴呢，跟 James 一起在这边，然后展出我的作品，来呈现出原住民对于时间还有灾难的想法。
So I thought I would share some insights into the making of this work, because it's a very complex work and people love staring at it and they often want to know how it's created, and the creation of it is as much in the process of making and the ethics of making is as important as the final work itself.
很多人都会好奇这次的作品到底在制作过程是如何展现，所以我们今天要跟各位介绍这揭开在幕后的制作过程。很多人在观看这个作品的时候都会好奇，这么复杂的概念，这么复杂、这么多元的内容，如何能够在这个画面里面呈现，让大家每个人都能够驻足观看许久。
And even to share the stage with Nina Tona, girlfriend, wonderful curator from New Zealand, that collaboration between Maori and many Pacific nations is something that wasn't always taken for granted in our histories in New Zealand.
我总也要非常感谢这次的策展人Nina 跟我们一起合作。那过去很长一段时间，其实纽西兰的毛利人跟南太平洋很多国家之间彼此合作，我们现在看起来好像是理所当然，可是过去其实并不一定是如此。
But the thing that connects us is the Pacific, or what Maori refer to as Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, or the great oceans of Kiwa, and that is a superhighway. So it's also the reason that some of the histories have developed. And in particular, some of the explorers, Western, Russian, French explorers were coming down into the Pacific and so-called discovering our lands.
在这么多的国家，不管是纽西兰或者这些南太平洋的国家当中，他们都是在这个大海当中彼此相连的，而这个大海也吸引了很多来自世界各地的探险家，他们试图发现这个地方。
So this is the first business card that was made when I was working on In Pursuit of Venus. It's a project that I've been, amongst a whole crew of other people I've been collaborating with. We've been working on this project for 11 years now. But this is an image taken from an illustration by James Cook, better known as Captain Cook, who was recording the transit of Venus.
各位看到的，现在这个是他们当时在做这个计划的时候开始做的第一版的名片，而这个计划其实除了艺术家本身之外，他还跟很多人这个团队密切合作了长达11年的时间，在这个过程当中，来自一起创作出这件作品，这件作品叫做《追寻金星》。各位看到现在这幅画面呢，其实当时库克船长他当时一开始他去追寻，他去发现这个地方的时候所画的一幅作品。
About 12 or so years ago, I was in the National Gallery of Australia, and this is a detail of a French scenic wallpaper called Les Sauvages de la Pacifique, and it was on exhibition at the time that I was visiting. And this image is myself and a woman called Viv Stone, the producer of the work, and we went to look at it just before we began a very big video shoot.
各位看到这件作品是当时12年前，当时这艺术家本人他到了这个纽西兰的国家艺廊，奥克兰国家艺廊的时候，他看到这件作品，这件作品是来自法国的壁画的作品。这件作品的名称叫做翻成中文之后叫做《太平洋的野外》，是太平洋的这个野生环境。所以他当时看到这件作品之后，在画面当中，他跟制作人，就是这件我们今天要介绍的作品的制作人一起观看这件作品之后，才进而开启了这次作品的拍摄制作过程。
And I found it really fascinating to look at this wallpaper because the representation of the indigenous peoples inside it was very strange to me. And the reason that it looked so unusual is because the French had developed some operas and some plays, and some of the costume designs were taken from a French costume designer, not from a Pacific or a Maori perspective.
各位看到他们当时看到这些作品的时候，这是来自法国的作品，他觉得非常的奇怪。奇怪就是在于他们这里面所呈现出来的原住民，其实不论是装束或者打扮，其实都非常的怪异。所以他们当时后来其实依据这样的画面之后，还做了歌剧或做了剧作等等。其中的这些服装都是由法国的服装设计来设计出来的，而不是来自于当地的原住民。
And I really love this image because already this is an Apple iPhone that's quite old. Quite quickly it's become superseded by new technology. But it's a great communication device. And this wallpaper was created as a communication device for salons and rich people's homes at a time when French tapestries were being superseded by the making of wallpapers. So this is in 1804.
各位看到这件作品其实是1804年的时候创作出来的作品。各位看到这个画面，艺术家本人非常喜欢，就是12年前那只 iPhone 当然12年前很旧的 iPhone， 不过它当时就是作为通讯装置所使用。而刚才看到这幅壁画跟壁纸，其实也是当时的通讯装置，由当时的水手跟当时的富人回到法国之后创作出来的作品，让当时的法国人能够去想象南太平洋的世界画面。所以对他们而言，这个时候1804年，这正好是壁纸逐渐取代刺绣的时候。
So I needed to see the wallpaper. This is a very small detail, probably about that big. But that's when I came up with this crazy idea of remaking the wallpaper, but extracting these utopian ideas of Pacific people and putting real, living, breathing people in their place.
这个是其中壁纸上面的一个微小的这几个都是微小的细节。在这细节当中，这时候艺术家突然有个突发奇想，他在想象的是能不能够去重新再制跟再现这样的画面，但是并不是透过绘画，而是让活生生的人能够重新去演绎它。
So this is a very first experiment. Because I didn't really know how to go about making this work. So it was one of the reasons it took a long time to create. And clearly I'm 10 years younger in that shot. And then I don't know about being a senior artist, I still feel too young.
所以当时他其实还并没有像是有这个概念跟想法，可是并不知道怎么创作，所以因此才花更多的时间。而这个看到这个就是10年前艺术家他们当时在集思广益，想要想出创作方法的地方。
But the nice thing is, the first place that we asked to support the project was called the South Pacific Film School, and they let us use their facilities over the Christmas period as a summer break, and we just took some lights and what we call green screen, it's a green screen shoot, into this space and started to experiment.
所以当时我们去洽询了这间叫做南太平洋电影学院的学校，他们是很慷慨的，在圣诞节或者是暑假的时候，把摄影棚借给我们，让我们能够在这个绿幕前面拍摄之后，进而一步一步的创作出最后大家看到的成品。
So the background is what we call a computer-generated illustration or CGI, and we filmed young Feeboy. And this is just our first experiment of extracting her from standing in front of the green screen and putting her into this new wallpaper space.
当然，后面的图像都是电脑动画后制出来的。当时我们第一次尝试就请了这位舞者跟这位角色到了现场之后，试图把这个角色融入到画面当中。
And one of the wonderful things for me through this project has been to collaborate with so many different people and sharing knowledge. Reihana is a word that Nina used previously. It's like workshopping. When you start working closely besides people, it's incredible the information that comes from even trying to recreate costumes or working on the body.
各位看到，其实，在过程里面有很多人的密切合作，才一起完成这样的创作。而且过程里面也不断的分享知识，就像刚才介绍人所说的一样，他们都非常强调这是一个在过程里面彼此协作之后，即便是比如说如何重现这个服装，如何在身上有不同的纹路等等，都是透过彼此分享知识而来。
And we treated it a bit like a fashion show, because I worked with some costume designers who were very good at styling and creating new looks on the body as we went. So this is some of the tapa or bark cloth. There's some paper bark works in the show upstairs, which was really interesting for me to see, that shared kind of material language that we have.
都会看到，其实我们在过程里面好像把它视为是一场时尚大秀一样，所以有很多人他们透过不同的想法，然后去试图把这些的作品能够重新再现出来。它部分的内容其实这次也有展出。
Because we were working with green screen material or a green screen technique, the unfortunate thing for me was we were unable to use fresh costumes. There's some beautiful costumes that are made around the Pacific using leaves from trees and creating almost like fish scales, and you probably know more about those than I do, but we immediately weren't able to use that kind of material. So the work itself, when you see it, has a very particular colour field.
各位看到的作品很可惜，当时本来是希望能够使用像当地原住民一样，用比如说树上的叶子啊，这些的自然素材来创作这些的衣服跟服饰，非常可惜当时没有办法完成。所以各位后来看到这些作品，其实对这些服饰其实都经过加工之后，就呈现出特殊的色泽。
And it's worth noting the colour red is a very chiefly colour from our islands. And so I initially, these are expensive plastic copies of flora that comes from New Zealand. We tried working with the original materials and they melted underneath the lights.
各位看到，其实红色是他们很多时候的主要色调，而这边他们其实是使用塑胶的方式呈现出那个花的色泽。他们一开始本来是想要用自然的鲜花来制作，可是，在那个非常强烈的聚光灯的照射之下，很快它就枯萎了。
And I was also able to work with some tattoo experts and start to understand the markings that particularly Tahitians have placed on the body. And these are an example of a full Tahitian tattoo style. It took about 8 hours to draw the front onto the body.
各位看到他们过程里面也跟刺青的专家一起讨论，然后如何去呈现出，比如说这边看到的是大溪地的刺青图腾，那如何在身上重现？光是正面，他们每一次画就要花8个小时才能完成。
And by working with this tattoo artist, she explained to me that there's a lot of, it's become a very popular tattoo style called black work. But what I learned through this process is after colonisation in Tahiti, a lot of the tattoos were erased with more ink, and so they were much more decorative than we previously thought.
各位看到，其实现在这些大溪图腾，这些大溪的纹身，过去其实他们在大溪都是非常常见的图腾跟纹身。可是后来呢，因为经过了殖民之后，他们这些殖民者会要求他们用更多的这些墨水去把它覆盖掩盖掉，所以他们其实现在的样子跟过去的图腾其实有些差别。
And so I've just got some images working in the studio against the green screen to show you that it's like being in a billiard hall. It's not a very friendly kind of space to work in when a lot of the performers are used to doing their dance performances outside in the fresh air.
各位他现在看到接下来几张照片，其实都是他们在拍摄时候的情况。当然，这样的环境并不是最理想的情况，毕竟过去很多的舞蹈、很多的展演都是在大自然的新鲜空气之下演出，而现在他们必须要在这个室内的绿幕前面去拍摄跟制作。
So, and working with some of the dance groups, ethically, I didn't want to take away their intellectual property, their ways of earning money. So I worked with a choreographer, and sometimes we would devise little dance sequences so they were specific to In Pursuit of Venus, but also it was about how to work with other people in a really ethical way.
在这个过程当中，当然其实还有很多合作的地方，我们也不希望，比如说跟这些舞蹈团体合作的时候，会剥削他们，然后让他们没有办法获得应得的报酬，或者是滥用他们的智慧财产。所以我们也跟编舞家合作之后，针对了这件作品追寻精心，特别去设置了一些舞步。
And these are just a couple of images to show you some of the cultural practices that I was trying to create and reinsert into the video.
可以看到是这几个例子都是希望能够从这样的在刚才这个壁纸上面去重现、去呈现、展现出这些过去的文化展演跟文化事件。
And so these are really speaking back through time from a contemporary perspective to the. This is a French illustrator who was on some of the journeys, but it's really, they were there initially recording some of our earlier practices that disappeared as a result of colonisation.
其实在这过程里面，我们是用非常当代的观点去回望过去的历史跟这些过去的文化展演跟实践。很多时候，这些比如说像这位插画家，他其实法国插画家跟着这些船到了现场之后，他们去记录了过去很多的这些文化实践。可是这些文化实践在历史当中都因为殖民的过程而逐渐消失。
And the other component of making this work was working with a technical crew, of which there are many people. My partner James, thank you. Stand up and turn around. James has helped me conceptualise and work on this project from the start.
当然，我们在过程里面也跟很多的技术人员一起合作，跟很多的技术团队合作，而他的伙伴 James 在过程里面从一开始就跟他一起合作到现在。
And there's a third person, his name is Sam Tozer, and he was both the DOP or the camera operator as well as the editor. And this is an image of two of the screens. We spent probably 4 years in an editing suite just looking at things such as these illustrations.
所以呢，他们其实也跟另外第三位成员一起合作之后，光是看现在各位看到画面这2个画面，其实他们就花了4年的时间，就盯着这个画面，试图去重现它。
So that's kind of the back engine of what it's like to make it work upstairs. And these are just some research images from the studio.
所以各位就知道，他们其实各位眼前的作品，还有楼上的作品后面有很多辛酸血泪的过程。这些过程这些接下来看到这几张照片都是当时的研究图像。
And I spent a lot of time looking at early illustrations and reading accounts from people such as Joseph Banks, Captain Cook, many explorers and artists who accompanied these journeys, and started to pick them apart as a series of performances to re-illustrate these ideas for the video process.
各位看到，他其实在过程里面回顾了很多过去的插画、过去这些记录等等，无论是库克船长或者是这 Joseph Banks 等等，他们都希望能够从他们的回忆跟记录当中，去一步一步拼凑出过去那段时间的情形。
Oh, this is my niece Ruby. The day that, with the costuming, there was the Pacific and Maori costuming, but of course to implicate the explorers into the process as well, I needed to create a whole series of Western costumes, and I had boxes of hats made.
所以各位看到，这个是他的侄女Ruby。那在过程里面，除了我们看到重现了很多原住民的服饰、原住民的文化之外，当然这个里面也有西方人的角色，所以我们制作出了很多西方的服饰。
And she helped me work and source students and actors, and in the work there's friends as well. I'm always trying to include family with me when I'm creating projects, but it was a huge extended family that I ended up with after finishing this work.
所以在过程里面，他们当然也找了很多的演员角色一起合作，而且在创作过程里面，艺术家还非常习惯跟家人一起合作，所以过程里面也有越来越多的家人一起加入。
And this is my sister's husband, and he's a chef, and he helped me find a hunter, and we hunted, this is a Captain Cook pig, and I wanted to recreate a scene upstairs, and actually put one of the Captain Cook pigs in there, and never mind, we ate it afterwards after we finished the shoot.
所以这位是他的妹妹的丈夫，他是一位主厨，所以他当时帮他们找了一位猎人，猎了一头小猪回来，他们希望去重现出当时库克船长在猎猪的情况。后来呢，当拍摄完毕之后，这只猪就成为我们当天的晚餐。
So these are just a few scenes, what it actually looked like when we're creating them in the studio.
接下来这些都是在摄影棚里面拍摄的画面。
And I was lucky enough to work with another young 3D artist, because of course the vessels and how we transit the moana, the sea, was really important, including that. To resist this idea that Captain Cook discovered the Pacific, because actually we were already there.
所以这个过程当中，当然我们提到了这个往它的南太平洋地区有大海彼此相连，所以我们也跟了这个3D 的艺术家一起合作去重构了这些的船只。所以我们要去抗拒的是所谓库克船长发现了南太平洋，但他们其实一直都在这里。
And this is an image that I made. So I took video frames across the whole length of the work that's upstairs, and then just divided them into minutes so that we had a sense of where the various scenes were placed in the larger project, so that we could start to record sounds to go with it, and choose which sort of audio to feature and include in the final soundtrack.
各位看到，这是在当时这楼上的作品当中把它印出来之后，每1分钟的时间表。那时间表它判断出来之后呢，还可以去进而录制它的声音，然后最后还有它的背景音效，希望在每一个段时间里面去呈现出不同的音效跟不同的展演。
Because at this point in time, I'd never seen the work. The first time I saw the work, because it takes 5 projectors to create the scene that you look at, and we hadn't actually seen anything at this point.
其实在这个阶段，其实他们还没有看到成品到底长什么样子，因为到最后的时候需要5部投影机同时去播放的时候，才能够呈现出这个最后的成品的画面。所以在这个阶段，他们其实也不知道最后成品是什么面貌。
And I think that's all the images that I have to share, but it's been fantastic to see the response of audiences to the work. And the thing that I really love the most when I see the work installed is I love seeing groups of people looking at groups of people. And I think it's that sense of humanity that we can learn from one of the things we can learn from this project.
这是他今天要跟各位分享的这些图片跟照片，还有制作背后的过程。他希望他呈现的是，他很高兴在这些作品呈现之后，有来自世界各地的回馈跟反响，对这些回应。他也很高兴看到，比如说眼前有一群人在观看另外一群人，希望在这个过程里面能够展现出人性，能够去促进彼此的认知跟学习。
I'm about to start to open questions, but I will start by opening us up to talk about the work. And one thing that I caught just in the beginning, you were saying that the original wallpaper was intended to be a communicative tool. And just as you wrapped up so lovely about your aspirations for the work, for you in terms of the work now travelling, it has been around the world and now is here. What are your aspirations for the work? Is it still a communicative tool? And if so, what are these bigger messages that you've seen coming through the work that you've displayed?
That's a good question. No, sorry. Do you want to read that?
好，第一个他想在开放各位提问之前，他想问的第一个问题是：现在各位看到这个作品的，他刚才一开始的时候，Lisa 提到，它其实是一个原来的壁纸，它就是一个传播沟通的工具跟装置，而现在这个作品也成为一种传播沟通的工具，到了世界各地的展出跟展演之后呢，他想知道他得到什么样的世界各地民众的回馈。
The work was designed for these stately homes, palaces, etc. initially. The difference of taking it into an art gallery and not a cinema is that people can sit and talk to each other while they're watching the work. So I find that is really interesting. The communication, I think, for me, I feel like the audience is bearing witness. They're seeing these scenes, these strange happenings before their eyes. And I think it reminds you of what it's like to see something for the first time. We live in an age where there's so much information that's available to you very, very quickly. And I think having to use your own imagination and your own knowledge to unpick what's happening is I think that's a really useful part of the work.
在这个过程当中，其实我们现在看到过去的那个壁纸，它其实放在皇宫，会放在有钱人的家里面，而这些作品现在是放置在很多的画廊，而不是电影院当中。那好处是每个人在观看的时候，他们可以彼此讨论、彼此交谈、彼此沟通。在现在这个世界里面，其实每个人眼前都有非常多的资讯，非常快速的轰炸我们。很多时候，我们已经忘记了怎么去运用自己所知所见，还有自己的知识去认知跟理解眼前的一切。所以很多时，我觉得这个过程里面，这是一个很好的机会，让大家可以去回想一下自己当第一次看到某件事情的时候，那个震撼，还有试图去理解它的过程。因为很多时候，我们都对我们而言，这都是不熟悉的东西的时候，我们第一次看到它的时候，当然会试图用我们自己的自身经验去理解眼前所发生的事情。
And at present moment, this work is playing in London in an exhibition called Oceania, and it's a very beautiful exhibition which has a lot of artifacts from museums across the world. And in that context, it makes the audience think about how and why do artifacts end up in museums, and whether they're traded or gifted or stolen.
在这个作品，其实现在也在伦敦展出。那伦敦展出的展览是跟大洋洲有关的展览，在博物馆里面，同时也摆放了很多来自南太平洋地区的文物。在这样的情境之下，这些作品会让很多的观众开始去思考，到底这些的文物是怎么样会到最后会出现在这个博物馆当中？到底是经过了贸易、经过了交换，或者是遭到窃取，最后到了博物馆。
And also, what's interesting for me is because the shows went to Venice, it's playing in Vienna, and when it's in the western part of the world, it's like we are being rediscovered all over again.
而且这个作品后来之前也曾经在威尼斯展出，在维也纳展出，在西方世界里面，好像他们这些西方人又重新发现了这个地区。
Listen, I love that when it goes to certain parts of the world, it is like seeing us again. And in some ways, it's seeing us in a different way. And I know, and this is from home, there's an immense pride about this work because there is agency. And you've done this in such a beautiful way by using language and different Pacific languages. And I wanted to ask if you wanted to talk about your approach to that and the way that you've incorporated in different vignettes around the world.
在这个过程里面，我们现在当然看到很多人，他们都透过这些作品，然后去重新去认识、去重新发现、重新去理解南太平洋地区。而在过程里面，其实Lisa 也用很多方式去试图去切入历史。那我们想知道是创作者本身是如何去用不同的角度来切入历史。
So initially, I thought this would be a silent work with a soundtrack, a sound design with it. But once, and we never heard the sound until a week before we showed it, after working on it for like 9 years. It suddenly had sound, which was surprising to myself and to my partner James, because actually there was a cacophony of sound. It was like going to a party.
其实一开始的时候，他们前9年的时候创作的时候，都是一个无声的作品，他们只在处理影像部分，一直到展出的前1个礼拜，他们才把声音连上去之后，才发现这个作品里面原来有这么多的声音，这么丰富的音效在其中，然后听起来好像是一场派对一样。
So we decided, once we listened to each vignette separately, as long as no one was making bad words, and and also there was a combination of some actors have language and some didn't. But we realised by including some of the languages in there, it actually did give it a life and an agency that I hadn't actually expected.
当然，在过程里面，有些角色他其实会说话，那有些角色是没有说话的。我们后来慢慢意识到，其实把这个语言放进去之后呢，会让这个作品有更多的生命力存在，而且会让我们有一些我过去完全没有想到，这样把语言加进去之后会产生不同的效果。
For instance, the scene of Captain Cook's death. The actors are by and large Samoan, and they're speaking in Samoan. But of course, Captain Cook was murdered, killed in Hawaii. So I'm really interested to see what feedback I get from Hawaiian people.
所以在这个壁画，在这个当时的壁画里面，他们所描述的情景是顾客船长，他最后他是死在这个萨摩亚人手中，所以旁边的人说的是萨摩亚人，可是在史实当中，其实顾客船长是死在夏威夷，所以大家很好奇的是，到时候如果是这个作品在夏威夷展出的时候，当地的民众会有什么样的观感跟想法
？Because from an ethical perspective, I would have preferred to work with Hawaiian actors had I had them available. But also, once I thought about it, I felt that the actors were very much embodying their DNA, their ancestry, and I didn't want to recolonize them again and take that voice away a second time.
对的，当时其实我们如果理想的情况之下，如果可以找到夏威夷的演员的话，当然想这么做。可是，在我们当时找到是萨摩亚的演员，我们也不想要去说在这过程里面再次殖民他们，去支配他们必须要说什么样的语言，所以我们决定让他们保留原来讲萨摩亚语的情况。
Equally, I have English and Welsh ancestry, and it should be acknowledged that the Western characters and people who are in the work are just as implicit in the process of what happened. Some of it was good, and a lot of it was disastrous for the Pacific peoples.
在过程里面，当然艺术家本身其实自己也有来自于英格兰还有威尔斯的血统，所以他其实在过程里面找这些也使用这些西方的演员啊、西方的角色在其中。在过程里面，当然在过去那些历史里面，其实不论是西方人还有这些南太平洋就是彼此之间的互动，当然也会有好有坏。
So I found a sea shanty which was written by a crew member of Captain Cook's boat. And we sing it after his death, and I wanted to include that kind of Western musicality because it is something that then went on to inform church music, which is one of the reasons that we include Bach into the soundtrack, because there's this kind of cross-fertilisation of knowledge that starts to be transferred and shared.
在顾客船长的水手的这些船员当中，其实有人后来创作了音乐之后送回到西方国家，所以我们也在作品里面融入了这段音乐跟作品，因为当时其实他的音乐也有一部分取自于当地的文化跟语言，所以在过程里面，这个音乐也象征着其实两边的文化已经开始在交流了。
I love that that you brought us to that point of talking about that both of them are involved in this narrative, and I think that's what's really powerful is that it makes us think about that cross-cultural encounter and exchange. And even when going through your process and seeing the amount of research, you know, and how much we're still exchanging in that way too, looking at the records and the archives to recover our own knowledge. I wanted to ask about some of the findings. These are amazing, and I think when looking at, say, an image like sketches from Arago of the dancer, and then how much of the problem solving did it take to then put it on a body? And you've got some very beautiful costumes in there, like one of which is the Ting-Ting costume. That is a composite costume, and so I wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about the problem solving of trying to work from the archive into performance and then a video.
刚才其实创作者提到，他们在过程里面创作，其实有很多的跨文化的交汇跟交流之后，激发这些作品的完成。而创作者其实过去有做了很多的研究之后，才把这些的无论是服饰、音乐等等重现在各位的眼前跟画面当中。所以很想知道的是，刚才有提到一部分关于如何去解决这个问题，如何去重现，他想请他再细部的谈一下，如何在服饰的创作还有服饰的这个设计方面解决很多当时意想不到的问题。
One of the nicest stories I'd like to recall now is recently in London. I went to the British Museum to look at the Tahitian cheap border costume they have. It took me about 2 years to make that costume because I'd never seen one. And so we wrote all these museums around the world. And we ended up getting a photocopy of a Gestetner set of instructions which came from the British Museum, the Bishop Museum in Hawaii, who had lent their costume out, and so we could see the layers of the different garments.
我最近到大英博物馆的时候去看了他们的产品，里面有一件是大溪地人的服饰。其实他们当时在创作的时候，很长一段时间都不知道到底实际的这个服饰长什么样子，他们只能够用想象，然后去模拟跟去揣摩它。后来呢，到了在夏威夷的这个主教博物馆，他们有一件这样的服饰之后，他们就很慷慨的出借给他们，让他们能够看到这个服饰里面有一层一层不同的感觉。
And I wrote a piece about the Tahitian costume to almost not embarrass them, but to encourage them to conserve their own costume, which they're in the process of doing right now. And through that process, they've discovered new parts of the costume that has never been seen before. And some of those materials were wrapped inside, so they're the original colours. And then that becomes really interesting to look at tukaya or tukai's drawings of the chief mourner costume. So it's been a wonderful project to work on because I've been able to really delve deep into making one work, but it's opened up many different types of doors, both about the past but also about the future.
也因为这样的关系，之后现在大溪地的这个当地人民已经开始去试图要去保存跟保留他们传统这些服饰，而且也因为这些服饰的保存跟保留之后呢，他们可以去观察到底其实，比如说这个每个叠层底下，其实原本有不一样的色彩，让他们可以去知道原本色彩是什么。所以我很高兴有这个作品。虽然这只是一件作品，可是因为这件作品的创作过程，我们开启了很多扇不同的门之后，进而去了解跟发掘更多不一样以前所未见跟从以前所不知道的事物。
So now when I do a Google search, there's about 10 times as much information about the Tahitian chief mourner than when I first embarked on it. So sometimes when you start to research, you kind of create an energy and then it creates more information that starts to circulate.
所以现在如果各位在网上搜寻有关大溪地的服饰的话，可能现在的资讯会比他10年前看到多了10倍以上。也是因为这样的关系之后，带动这个作品的创作跟制作，带动了很多人开始去关心，然后进而去了解这些不一样的文化跟他们所本地的文化。
那个就是引言人跟引人提问到此先结束一段。那接下来有30分钟，我们就开放给现场做提问。那请大家踊跃发言，不管是问 Nina 或是问 Lisa 都可以。
Lisa, Talo. Not Talo, Malawi Lele. I was just upstairs admiring your work, and it's absolutely amazing. First, a technical question for Lisa. What's the runtime of this work? Because I didn't get to finish it. And secondly, what is the meaning of the title "In Pursuit of Venus"? And finally, I want to ask what's the main narrative that you want to convey, because I started from sort of now that I understand that you're actually talking about the story of Captain Cook voyages. So I started from sort of a negotiation between the Westerners and the indigenous people, and then that which leads to a violent scene, and now I understand it's about the death of Captain Cook. What is it leading to? What's the? I want to know the end. Is it all these events leading to colonization or something else? That's my question.
他刚才在上面看了这件作品的时候还没有看完，不过他有几个问题想问。第一个问题是这部作品的全长有多久？第二个问题是
名字
我们的这个名字叫做追寻金星，到底为什么叫追寻金星？那第三点是我们刚才他看到了很多的场景，比如说有原住民跟库克学长的交涉谈判的过程，然后后来有暴力场景，到最后到底会发生什么事呢？到最后是导向殖民化吗？他想知道的是，他之前不知道这是跟库克学长的旅程有关，所以他现在想知道这个作品后面会发生什么。
So the runtime is 64 minutes. But there's 2 32-minute loops. In fact, this is one scene that's different. The title Venus refers to Captain Cook recording the transit of Venus, and the recording of the transit of Venus set latitude, and then once you set latitude, you created the map whereby Western cultures were coming into the Pacific for resources. In New Zealand, a lot of our kauri forests were taken for masts. It was an ecological disaster for us. Our beautiful lands were turned to farming, more farming practices. So Venus is also about love, and it's good to have something positive in the title. But I did the sucker punch with the infected next to it, and that's in reference to the pathogens that travel as we travel around the world. It happens now, you can easily catch the flu when you catch a train, plane, automobiles. But also that idea of infected is once you know something, you can't unknow it.
所以这个作品全长有64分钟，所以这是也是作品可以让大家静静的欣赏。那这个追寻金星呢，是一开始顾客船长他们去记录的是金星在天空中的变化，进而去绘制地图。所以金星是他们当时引以为去判断这个地图跟自己所在位置的方式。当然也同时代表他们慢慢的进入到南太平洋之后，开始去发现，还有开始去探索这几个地区的过程。金星当然也象征的是爱情，那这个也是他希望能够在作品里面去提供一些正面的讯息。但同时他后面画了一个括号写感染，为什么写感染呢？因为随着这些的顾客船长还有这些外来者进入之后，他们也带来了很多的病菌，然后就像现在我们也同样的，在不论只要搭火车、坐飞机等等，都很容易有感染这些不同的病菌等等，所以他们象征的是因为这些的人进来的变化之后，而产生了很多改变。比如说过去美丽的这些家园都变成了农地等等。那另外感染就是也同样代表的是，一旦你知道了某件事情，你就不能够就回不去了，你就不可能再去假装自己不知道这件事情，这件事情是无法再倒退的。
And in relation to what is it that I really wanted to model in this work, I think the time period precedes, in New Zealand we have the Treaty of Waitangi, which is an official relationship between Maori and the British Crown. So this work looks at what happened before and why the British were there. But also in terms of colonisation, there was a moment in time when we were seen as the dying race. People with many cultures were dying due to flu bugs and many other pathogens. And the fact that you have all these beautiful performers in the work, they are the embodiment of their ancestors. That's where the strength of the life and culture remains against all odds.
各位看到的这个作品当中，其实也是在后来他们大英国协或者英国这个帝国后来跟当地的毛利原住民签署了一个条约，叫做《怀唐伊条约》。这个作品在描述是怀唐伊条约签署之前发生的事情。所以当然在过程里面，因为殖民的关系，很多人因此死掉，或因此而上命，或者文化因此遭到很多的迫害等等。但是我们看到这么多的角色，这么多的人物，他们要去重现自己的原住民的文化跟原住民的艺术，希望去呈现的是，虽然经过这么多变化，每个人还是有他的生命力，跟他的生命之美，有他的坚韧之后，能够去不断把这些文化继续的传承，继续的展演下去。
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Stephen. Two questions. Do you have any affection for the original artist? Notwithstanding an understanding of ambivalence around representation and everything else, but for the effort and the artistry that went into the original work. And secondly, do you have any fears about technology evolving so rapidly and your work not being able to be shown at some point because the technology is not there to do that?
I'll make a joke. Oh, okay.
所以他们好奇关心的是他的创作者本身对于原住民艺术这个概念的想法是吗？另外一点是，现在科技不断在日新月异，他会不会担心有一天，也许现在的科技或者未来的科技没有办法再播映这个作品？
So, I'm an artist, and I have great affection for all the artistry that is within the work. Going right back, in fact, to people such as Sydney Parkinson, who, as an artist, ended up being the portraiture. He was there to do botanical drawings, but due to the other artist dying on the ship on his way down to the Pacific, he ended up being the portrait artist. So I wanted to include artists in the work, because I'm not a historian. This is not a historian's piece. This is all about the art. And in looking at Dufour, was the entrepreneur who made the wallpaper, and I took a lot of learnings from him as well. In fact, I absolutely love the wallpaper. I think it's an incredible, it's a fiction, but it's still an incredible piece of technology of its time.
所以当然，他在里面其实有很多创作者本身是一个艺术家，他当然喜欢各种不同的艺术啊、艺术历史等等。这个作品呢，当时其实出自一位叫做 Patterson 的人的之手。那 Patterson 其实一开始并不是做肖像画的，他本来是去那边去描绘当地的植物。可是因为在旅程过程当中，原来负责画肖像画那个人不幸的病逝之后呢，他只好肩负起这个责任，开始负责画肖像画。所以这个作品里面其实当然有很多西方的元素在里面，都是因为这个人所描绘下来的。那他自己当然也非常喜欢这件作品，因为它里面呈现了很多我们以前所不知道、所没有看过的一些画面。
And in relation to that question about technology, I take great comfort in the fact that people go to museums and see paintings on the wall, and that there are people such as Nina and all the organisers here whose job is to support the presentation of culture. And if my work can no longer be seen, then there'll be many, many other things to take its place. But no, I'm not scared of technology at all. I really like it. It drives me a bit bonkers sometimes, but it's a great medium to work in. And in some ways, I think the transmission is almost going to become easier with a bit of time.
对，现在当然他并不会担心这个科技的变化或变迁。其实现在我们从这次展览里面看得出来，不论是策展人或者是主办单位等，他们都会去呈现出各种不同的艺术作品，他们有去保存这些的艺术作品，不论数绘画或者现在那些新科技等等，所以他其实并不会太过担心。而且他也相信未来这些资讯传播，因为科技的关系，因为时间的演进，会有越来越简单或者是越来越不一样的方式。所以他自己其实很喜欢科技，并不担心科技会因此威胁到他的作品存在。
Thank you both, Lisa and Nina. I just want to say it's just really awesome to have you here representing Māori and Pacific art from New Zealand. I think it's really powerful. I did have a question for Lisa. I was just really struck by how amazing and authentic the work is, and that it took you 10 years. And I just wondered, what was driving you that whole time? And it did look like you actually been busy throughout those whole 10 years. But I just wondered if you had any moments where you kind of thought, any down moments, and sort of what advice you have for other artists who are wanting to get themselves through a long-term project like that.
首先非常感谢两位这次把这些南太平洋还有纽西兰的艺术作品，还有原住民的艺术作品带到台湾来呈现给大家。大家知道这些作品当然前后花了10年的时间完成，我还想知道它的背后的动力是什么？有没有在过程里面有没有什么让他比如说失落或丧志的时候如何去重振起来？那也好奇的是，对于其他艺术家如果想要进行这种长时间的创作的话，会有什么建议？
So the thing that kept me going for these many years, apart from gyms, of course, is the learning. I love learning, and every day we still are learning through making this project, and I show it, and then people might tell me another cultural story that fills me with great hope and love. I mean, For me, I became an artist. My father left his tribal homelands and was making money in Auckland in the city. So art has been the key that's opened up many doors, that's allowed me to look deeply into my culture and others. And the other thing that really kept me going is there are so many other people who helped work on this. They're in it or they're behind the scenes, and I owe it to them to make sure it gets delivered at the highest possible and the best that it possibly can be.
当然，在这么多年期间，除了James 跟他一起的相识之外呢，相互扶持之外，他其实非常喜欢其中的学习过程。在制作过程里面有很多的学习经验，学到很多东西，或者是展出之后，其他人看了这些作品之后，告诉他其他的文化故事等等，对他而言都是学习的经验，所以他一路以来都学到很多新的事物。另外一点是在过程里面有这么多人跟他一起合作，无论是在幕前或是幕后，更让他有更坚定的决心，决定要把这些作品完成。
Lisa, I just saw your film last night, and I stayed there for a long time because I know, and I was very admire what you do because maybe many people they never see the real life from their ancestry, and listen to your speech. I just figure out is the beginning of the Western people, they colonize the land. I saw several things and I had some feeling to share. For example, there's a picture. The indigenous people, they take something to the British people and they open it and feel shocked. Oh, it's dead people, the dead body. But I have the other thinking. It is something means the indigenous people are more they are educated, they are too cruel, something like that. But what about the other side? Like maybe it is just the beginning of occupy the land, but maybe the later on you may make some other films to talk about the real cruelest part. Like there's another exhibition upstairs. There are many bones. Maybe you have to look. I think it's a genocide on a village in Taiwan. Around almost 200 people in a small village. But in the Qing destiny, those people they like treat the indigenous people and say, oh, I give you, you help me to carry the bag of rice and I will give you some. So many people they go there, but in the end they found out there's a trick, and it's a kind of in Germany. Hitler, killed all the people. So it's pretty sad. Until now, I still feel headache when I hear this story. So maybe it's what I want to think about that. I hope maybe your film can show something like that to show people, not only the indigenous people, they are cruel. They cut people, something like that. But how about the other side of people? How do they colonize this land and kill those people? Thank you.
Thank you.
他昨天晚上看过他的作品之后呢，当然看到很多不同的片段。那其中有个片段是，当地的原住民就拿了一包东西给西方人，西方人打开之后发现是尸体的一部分，然后他就觉得好像，当时西方人觉得很惊讶，觉得这边人很残 富，他们竟然会杀人食人等等，但是其实好像没有去呈现出来的，在西方殖民过程里面，也许有很多很残酷的面向，比如说上面的作品里面，也许会提到了台湾的原住民过去遭到屠杀的情况，或者是我们想到希特勒的时候，希特勒时期纳粹也曾经屠杀过很多人。特别好奇的是，Lisa 在未来会不会有可能创作出去凸显西方人过去也许野蛮或者是杀戮的一面？
So my hope is with this work, and I did look at the piece about the massacre, that we, as artists, we can unearth these stories and remind people about what is important and what not to lose in the face of humanity. And certainly, it's a really big concern when we look at the political situation and where we find ourselves right in this moment of time, and the way that politics are shifting to the right. I mean, in terms of the work, it's very much based around the wallpaper, and so that's what's framed some of the images that you see. And there are other works that I could make and have made, but that's where this particular work sits.
当然，在现在的这些环境当中，我们不断去透过这个作品，我们希望能够去呈现出其中的人性的层面。而且现在，其实我们要去反思一下，在现在这个世界逐渐往右派起的情况之下，我们的会面临什么样的处境？这一次这个作品其实主要的架构就是来自我们刚才看到那幅壁纸跟壁画，所以它的主要的叙事脉络是限制在这幅壁画当中，在这个壁纸当中。它过去Lisa 也曾经做出其他的作品去讨论出其他不同的面向。So time for last question， 最后一个问题，有时间吗？我们要问最后一个问题。Not？ 没有。如果没有的话，那我们就以掌声谢谢两位。